what was really telling, it was funny to me because he also admits in the middle that he acknowledged that he said a lot of dumb things and has made mistakes in the past. These are his words. And I was like, okay, he has some self-awareness.
But he says that as he does something else dumb.
And then like he kind of admits that I saw this on First Things First. He admits that that this whole situation came out of nowhere for him. And so it's like, have you not been watching the news? You work in New York, and New York is putting out this vaccine mandate. It's not the NBA. And so
let me put you on game.
But what we're seeing off the court is we've got some histrionics from our guy Kyrie Irving. He's out here doing a lot as he typically does. He's been in the news constantly over the last few weeks, and we have talked about him some, but we've really tried to avoid talking about him every week because there's a new development every week. So we didn't want it to get too stale. But with the newest news from the Nets, it's almost required that we talk about it. So I do want to do a deep dive into Kyrie. If you are tired and you have Kyrie or Ben Simmons fatigue, just go ahead and skip past this portion of the podcast. But to get into it, the Brooklyn Nets recently decided to forego the idea of Kyrie playing half the season by declaring that he would not be playing for the team unless he was a full participant, which he can only be by getting fully vaccinated. Kyrie went on Instagram Live and came out and said essentially that he is okay with sitting out due to wanting to be a voice for the voiceless. He said he wants to stand up against the mandate and for people that have lost their jobs due to being unvaccinated. And because of this decision, Kyrie stands to lose approximately $18 million this year, and he will not be offered the $200 million extension that he was in line to receive. So with all of that in mind, what are your thoughts on the Kyrie situation?
This Kyrie situation is fascinating, to say the least, and it's just fodder for media attention. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, they can't get enough of it. And overall, like, I actually listened to his whole IG live. It was a bit of fluff. He kept repeating a lot of the same things over and over again. Got to use logic, bro. I feel for the people. I hear people and their complaints, and I don't want to be used as, I don't want my message to be hijacked by someone else, which it already has been over and over again. But at least he got his word on the matter out. And I think what he was trying to do was like dispel some of the narratives and maybe give you the perspective from his end. And his perspective was not all that enlightening. It landed a bit flat for me. Yeah. But I understand the sentiment, which comes down to what I feel like a lot of people who are unvaccinated and are kind of like entrenched in that position is, in that you shouldn't have the right to tell me what to do with my body. And I understand that, I understand that whole freedom aspect and just not wanting anyone to really force your hand in any decision. At the same time, public policymakers are doing the best they can to try to help alleviate this pandemic. And people are really just trying to look out for those who are just getting sick and then being ravaged by the disease. They're saying that I think there's 11 times chance of dying from being unvaccinated versus being vaccinated. And then when you're looking at ICU beds and people who are in them, and you see a bunch of Black people who are dying from the disease still, who have comorbidities, obesity, hypertension, et cetera, it makes you feel that anyone who is anti-vax at this point is being largely unhelpful. And the two sides are not really talking to each other. The talking points are kind of missing each other at this point. And everybody's so entrenched that no one really can really empathize or understand where the other is coming from. And so bringing that back to kind of the Nets, I think Kyrie is just more of a distraction to the team at this point. And I don't know if his message, although he's trying to clear it up, it's going to do anything more than just be more of a stain for the team and this season going forward, and affects Kevin Durant's and James Harden's title chances.
Yeah, I think that people are treating a vaccine almost like it's like chemotherapy in a way. Like, if you're someone that has cancer, it's helpful to go through chemotherapy in a lot of cases, but it's ultimately your choice whether or not you want to, how you want to approach your recovery, if you want to go holistic or whatever you want to do, because it may affect your family on an emotional level, your decision, but it doesn't really affect the everyday person that you would come across. But with a vaccine, the idea isn't your own personal health, it's the health of the people around you. So it's like, you not doing or not doing chemotherapy is not going to affect everyone else. But like with being unvaccinated, not only are you more likely to get sick from it, you're more likely to spread it. So it's like, it's not, people, when he says it's my body, my choice, it's like, yeah, it is your body and it is your choice, but that choice is affecting so many other people. And with your platform and like how many kids love Kyrie. So it's like with how many kids that are listening to everything that he's saying, it's like, it is incredibly damaging from a health perspective, but also from like an image perspective. So I do want to couch this by saying that I do think that Kyrie is a good person. And I think that he's done a lot of great things that many other NBA players wouldn't do, including putting his money and his assets and his time where his mouth is. But he so consistently distracts from those good things by just being hard-headed and being a self-proclaimed revolutionary when no one asked him to be that, nor is he. So it's like, and I see people online kind of treating this like he is a revolutionary and putting pictures of him up next to pictures of Muhammad Ali, and it's like, he's not Muhammad Ali. It's like standing up against an unjust war is not the same thing as standing up against a vaccine. It's like, and standing with people who have lost their jobs over this is not even anywhere close to actually trying to stand with the families of the people, the hundreds of thousands of people who had died from the disease. So it's like, I do think that if you don't want to get vaccinated, it's your choice, but like I don't agree with it being a political stance. And it's the whole voice of the voiceless thing to me is just so silly, because like you said earlier, he's not really saying anything. He's not really taking a firm stance one way or the other, or saying that this is what I believe or don't believe. Like, he's kind of couching it and waffling one way or the other. And it's like, it's incredibly frustrating. And also, like, I really wish he would take a look at the people that are standing with him as well. Like when Ted Cruz and Donald Trump Jr. are the ones that are retweeting you, like, that's not a good look, fam. That ain't it. But overall, like, it's a really incredibly frustrating situation. And Kyrie himself is an incredibly puzzling person. But I don't know. It's a little tiresome, the whole saga.
And what was really telling, it was funny to me because he also admits in the middle that he acknowledged that he said a lot of dumb things and has made mistakes in the past. These are his words. And I was like, okay, he has some self-awareness.
But he says that as he does something else dumb.
And then like he kind of admits that, I saw this on First Things First. He admits that that this whole situation came out of nowhere for him. And so it's like, have you not been watching the news? You work in New York, and New York is putting out this vaccine mandate. It's not the NBA. And so the NBA has nothing to do with this. This is a New York City thing. And this is the municipality in which you work. So you're going to kind of fight against this municipality. And it's like, it goes beyond the league. And it ends up being a situation where he's going to have this standoff that he's going to end up losing. And then it's like, you should have prepared yourself for this. You should have seen this coming. So for you to have been caught off guard by this shows maybe your team or the people around you or yourself are just not really paying attention as much as you say you are. And then overall, it just represents the fracture in our society right now. And then I just look at the comment section of anytime somebody's either pro-vax or anti-vax, and I see that the media is saying one thing, but the people in the comment section are saying a completely different thing. And it's a really fascinating dichotomy, because this is what you hear being blasted out, but people internally are saying and feeling a completely different side of things. And it's just a public health failure, because I feel like people are just so misinformed. And there's been so much, I guess, hyping of the vaccine to a certain extent, and well, not hyping of the vaccine, but there's just been so much miscommunication and mistrust that has been built up over years that is kind of finally coming to a head. And those who are more conspiratorially minded are definitely digging their heels in and being as disagreeable as possible, which is ultimately unhelpful towards the end goal of just getting life back to normal to some degree.
Yeah, it's a really weird time, of course. Like, I really wish that people would understand that it's not a political stance. It's a public health issue, you know? Like, and for Kyrie, he strikes me as someone that, of course, thinks that being a contrarian makes you smarter. Like, if everyone else thinks this one thing and you think the opposite, that somehow like you're woke and they're just following like a consensus, or they're being sheeple or whatever else. And for me, it's just like, no, it's like when there is a consensus on something, sometimes it is people just kind of following in line because it's human nature, but other times it's because that consensus is right and all the evidence supports it being correct. But people are just very content to look at YouTube or whatever else they want to look at. And I don't know, it's just really frustrating to have for him to say that he's standing for something, and people like Andrew Wiggins saying they're standing for something, and then when you confront them about what they're standing for, they just kind of dial back into my body, my choice, or it's a private matter, when in reality, like, everything you're doing right now is the antithesis of making it a private matter. You're making it a very public matter by doing what you're doing. But I mean, if he's okay with losing the checks, he's okay with losing it. I mean, that's him. But how do you think this decision affects the Nets' title chances if he ultimately does not play this season?
I mean, it affects them in a negative way, because even though his health was up and down last year, that depth added really valuable minutes to a team that was really dangerous and could put up buckets like no other team in the league. And I think that Durant and James Harden could win a championship by themselves, but I also look at the depth of their team, and it's not that strong behind them. LaMarcus Aldridge would be there, Bruce Brown and Joe Harris, as well as Patty Mills, are going to really round out that team. But then those players are not what Kyrie brings to the table. And it's that three-headed monster that allows all the, role players to really shine. And so not having them there will be a disservice to the team ultimately, but I think they're still going to be competitive, and I think that they're still going to be right there as long as Harden and Durant stay healthy.
I think that the loss of Kyrie takes them down a notch for sure. I think they go from favorites in the East to sharing that title with Milwaukee, because I think that they're still a very good team. I disagree on the depth aspect. I think they do have a lot of depth. I think that they didn't have that last year, but I think that what they saw in the playoffs and what they saw throughout the season was that these guys aren't necessarily going to be reliable because of their injury history and because of Kyrie's injury history and also his personal history. He may not be the most reliable. Like, people were saying, like, basically, like, they were like, why are you balking at Kyrie potentially playing 41 games a year? Like, that's literally what he does every other year. It's par for the course. But yeah, so I don't know. It's tough to say, but the fact that they're actually still contenders and they're still favorites in some people's eyes without one of the best, guards to ever lace them up is phenomenal. But I mean, it goes to show like how almost unfair their level of talent was. But we'll have to see going into the season. This is probably not the last time we'll talk about it. It's kind of the last time I want to talk about it, but we'll see how it goes going into the season.